But look, let's move on. Sophie, let's go to you about a story you wrote in Monday's newspaper about a fallout at The Age over a decision not to publish a controversial photo.
This is really interesting, Jack. So The Age, the Melbourne 9 entertainment masthead here, decided not to run images of the Nazi salute that was performed outside the steps of Parliament at a pro-women's rally several weeks ago. Now, this was very controversial because they would not run these images, yet they were across many other outlets, including ABC, News Corp, Guardian and so forth. But the editor of The Age, Patrick Elliott, wrote to his subscribers recently and said he thinks he may have made the wrong editorial call in not publishing those images, which are obviously highly offensive to many people, including the Jewish community. And he asked for feedback whether or not he made the right decision. So, Jack, this is a very interesting issue because it begs the question, do we erase news that is happening? The Nazi salute was happening on the steps of the Victorian Parliament. This is something that is happening in Melbourne, and The Age newspaper chose not to run those images. So it's opened up a big debate of how far back in history do you go with erasing these images?
Yeah, I mean, Kosher, Sophie makes such a good point. I mean, we can all close our eyes and pretend that it didn't happen, but it happened. And that's not saying that you're endorsing the Nazi salute by showing the reality of the situation. It's news, isn't it?
It is, and I think that's the key issue with all of this. Erasure and the memory hole is getting bigger and bigger, and we're seeing that every day in different contexts. This is just the latest example. The other thing I think it highlights is this continued blurring of editorial and hard news. And often hard news stories are being masqueraded as, or vice versa, editorial opinion, I should say, are being masqueraded as hard news stories. So that's another issue. And the more and more those two things blur and blend together, they will pay a price, right? Then credibility then gets called into question. And the average reader is now always going to question any story or any image that's either shown or not shown. What was the true story and how much has it been editorialized? And I think there's a third point that's fascinating to me, too, in this, Jack, is there's sort of this upending in all corporations, including media and newsrooms, of the traditional hierarchy of the superior and the deputies. And here, from Sophie's piece, it sounded like it was a senior editor who was a leading voice in favor of censoring it, but it was still somebody junior to the editor-in-chief. And we're seeing this everywhere. In the New York Times, there were sort of these really young editors who succeeded in censoring a piece that a sitting U.S. Senator Tom Cotton wanted to present. You saw it at Spotify, where these junior staff were really pressuring the CEO to cancel Joe Rogan. And you see this here, where the editors sort of come out, and he's new, and he hasn't been on good footing. And you just see sort of junior staff kind of running the show, and the senior people are sort of stepping back lest they put a foot wrong. And that's, I think, a fascinating dynamic in all of this.
You're so right. It's so cowardly, isn't it? I mean, what kind of editor goes and takes the advice of that junior journalist who's really, in these situations, they're often masquerading as activists, particularly in the Joe Rogan saga.